Shocks me about this game.
And that drew rim. It's still loose. Luka got it back. He did it. An improbable comeback by Dallas to tie it with 1 second left. It's unbelievable. It is a miracle. It's overtime. Stranger things.
Yeah, enough time to do that with 4 seconds. Here we go. He missed it. Donovan Mitchell!
So over the past 2 weeks, NBA fans have had the pleasure to witness 2 all-time great performances by 2 different players over a 6-day span. And those 2 games I'm referring to are Luka Doncic's 60-21-10 game and Donovan Mitchell's 71-8-11 game, both of which resulted in those guys sending their teams to overtime and securing the victory. Not only were the games spectacular, but they were also record-breaking performances, as Luka became the only player in NBA history to have a 60-20-10 triple-double, and Donovan became the only player ever to score 70-plus points and have over 10 assists in a single game. And with Luka and D-Mitch putting on such rare performances, it's only natural that they both came with a ton of praise from around the NBA world, congratulating them and marveling at such an achievement. And I was also part of the numerous amount of people in the NBA community that were in all of those games. But after some of the excitement died down, I asked myself a question that I'm sure a lot of you also asked, and that was, where do these 2 performances rank all time? And in this video, I'm going to say where I rank them both amongst the all-time great performances throughout NBA history. But before we get into the list, go ahead and do me 2 things. I need 2 things out of y'all. First thing, go ahead and hit that like button. Second thing, hit the subscribe button. And actually make it 3 things. Third, hit that bell down below for post notifications so you know every single time I post. Like I've said numerous times, I appreciate every single one of y'all that likes and subscribes. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This channel could not be what it is without y'all. But go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, post notifications. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So for this video, I've gone ahead and listed out what I believe to be the 4 greatest single game performances in league history, and we're going to go ahead and see if Luka or D-Mitch makes the cut, or if they both make the top 4. And at the end, I'll go over some honorable mention performances that are all-time greats but not quite good enough to make the top 4, and I'll explain why they're not in there. But starting with number 1. At number 1, I have Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, and this is honestly a no-brainer. For a player to score 100 points in a professional game on 57% shooting is just so mind-boggling that there are literally a group of people today, some 60-some years later, who don't believe this game actually happened or that Wilt really scored that many points. So 100 points on 57% shooting in a win, Wilt gets the number 1 spot on this list. Coming in at number 2. At number 2, I have Kobe Bryant's 81-point game. And I have this at number 2 not just because it's the second highest scoring game in league history, but because of how Kobe played in this game and the manner of which he accumulated those 81 points to secure the win for his team. See, most people see Kobe's 81-point game as an all-time impressive feat, but they bring up the fact that it was on a random Sunday afternoon in January versus a bad Toronto Raptors team. And while those things are true, the greatness of this game runs deeper than just that surface level analysis. See, while it's true that the Raptors were not a good team at that time, it's not like the LA Lakers were world beaters either. And having gone back and rewatched that game a few months ago, the Lakers were actually down to that Raptors team 14 points going into the half. But it's in that second half where Kobe solidified this as the second greatest single game performance of all time. In just the second half, after being down 14 points, Kobe proceeds to come out at halftime and score 55 points on 64% shooting from the field and 54% from 3 to win the game. 55 points in just one half of basketball. And we marvel at Michael Jordan's double nickel 55-point game versus the Knicks, but Kobe said, I'll do you one better. I'll put up my own double nickel, but do it in half the time on better efficiency and with less shots taken. So the fact that he was down double digits at the half and brought his team back, single-handedly brought his team back to win by scoring 55 points on insane efficiency and totaled 81 points for the entire game, Kobe gets that number 2 spot. Coming in at number 3. At number 3, I have the aforementioned Luka Doncic 60-21-10 game. And Luka's game was actually kind of similar to Kobe's, just in the regard that he had to put up an insane stat line to bring his team back from being down so they could win. Now, the only difference is that the entirety of this game, the Mavericks never had the lead and were trailing the Knicks the entirety of the game. At the end of the first quarter, they were down 4 points. Now going into halftime, they're down 11. Then going into the fourth quarter, they were down 13. So they're progressively getting further and further behind the Knicks. So what does Luka do in the fourth quarter, understanding the situation? In the fourth quarter alone, Luka puts up 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists, and does all that on 73% shooting. And then, in the last 18 seconds of the game, with Dallas down 6 points, Luka proceeds to score 6 unanswered points, hits the game-tying shot to send them into overtime with 1 second left on the clock. And then in OT, Luka does what Luka does. He completely outscores the entire Knicks team by himself 7-6 and secures the win. So given the stakes, the historic stat line, the clutch shot making with 1 second on the clock to tie the game, the defensive opposition, the Knicks have a top 10 rated defense, and how the Mavericks needed every single point Luka could give them, plus the amount of rebounds he grabbed and the number of assists he dished out on top of scoring 61 points, Luka had without a doubt the third greatest game in league history. And now we round out the top 4. And at number 4, I really wanted to put Donovan Mitchell's 71-point game, not just because of the amount of points he put up, but how he just went completely berserk in the second half and saved his team. But there's one game, and I'm going to give this one a boost because it was a playoff game, and how this one player had to fight and scrap for every single point to drag his team to win in the playoffs against a top 10 defense. And that player is none other than Kevin Durant. And at the number 4 spot, I have Kevin Durant's 2021 Game 5 versus Milwaukee, where he went 49, 17, and 10 in a win. So with the series tied 2-2, Brooklyn had lost 2 straight games and was in danger of going down 3-2. And now, being down in Game 5, 16 points at the half, and later 6 going into the fourth quarter, Kevin needed to be spectacular to win the game, and in short, he was. In just the fourth quarter, KD goes 22-2 on 67% shooting and essentially matches the Bucks shot for shot, as Milwaukee scored 21 points in the fourth quarter and Kevin by himself scored 20, and Brooklyn goes on to win the game. So in that second half, after being down 16, very similar to Luka, very similar to Kobe, in that second half, Kevin Durant scores 31 points, gets 8 rebounds and 7 assists, a near 30-point triple-double, while shooting 77% from the field and an insane efficient 60% from 3. And in doing so, he posted the second highest scoring playoff triple-double in the history of the league. And not to mention, Kevin Durant didn't have Kyrie in this series, and Kevin Durant barely had James Harden, so he's playing with no Kyrie, half of what James Harden is, against a top 10 defense against the best player in the world in Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he wins. So, that is why I have this game, because it's a playoff game, and then the stakes, what was at stake, slightly ahead of Donovan Mitchell's 7-point game, but that's why I give Kevin Durant the edge, rounding out the top 4 greatest single performances in league history. At number 1, we have Wilt's 100-point game. Number 2, Kobe's 81-point game. Number 3, Luka's 60, 21, and 10 game. And number 4, Kevin Durant's 49, 17, and 10 game. So now for the honorable mentions that I had talked about. And starting with the first one is Donovan Mitchell's 71, 8, and 11 game. And while that game was absolutely spectacular, and you could really argue that it deserves to be in the top 4, and I wouldn't really fight too hard against you. Reason it wasn't in the top 4. Number 1, I thought Kevin Durant's game had a bit more at stake, seeing as how he was in danger of going down 3-2. Now, granted, they did end up losing the series anyway, but the fact that Kevin was able to extend that series to go to 7 based off just going off the efforts of his back was sensational. So I decided, and it was a playoff game, so I gave him the boost for that. And then Luka and D. Mitch's game was darn near identical. The way they just both went supernova in the second half, the way they both hit clutch shots at the end of the game, D-Mitch with 3 seconds left, Luka with 1 second left. But it was the fact that Luka, while he is a bigger guard, still snagging 21 rebounds is unbelievable. So I gave him the very slight edge over D-Mitch for that. That's why Donovan Mitchell is in an honorable mention but not in the top 4. The next player will be Michael Jordan. He has 2 sensational games. He had a 63-point playoff game against the Celtics, and he had a 69-point game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The reason he didn't make the top 4 because in both of those games he did get walked down. He had a double-digit lead against the Cavaliers going into the fourth quarter. The game got sent to overtime, and he had a lead after the first quarter, after the halftime, and then going into the fourth quarter with the Celtics in his 63-point game that he did end up hitting 3 clutch free throws. Granted, kind of a questionable foul call, but still hit him to go into overtime. But he ended up losing the game. So unlike Kobe, unlike Kevin Durant, unlike Luka, where they had to punch their way up, Mike was more so punching down. Not in terms of competition, but the fact that he had the lead and then ended up having to go into overtime with both those games. So that's why he doesn't make the top 4. Sensational performances, but just not as clutch, if you will, as the other two, right? David Robinson had a 71-14-5 game. Those points were a bit more manufactured. The Spurs had the game in hand, and they were trying to get David the scoring record. Elgin Baylor in the 62 finals had a 61-22-1 game, which is just completely unbelievable. I'm sorry, he had a 61-22-1 game. But the fact that he shot like 44% from the field or like 48% from the field, to me, disqualifies him from being an all-time great game because the efficiency wasn't there, nor were the assists. And in that same 1962 finals, Bill Russell had a 30-40-4 game. 40 rebounds in the game is like unreal, and it's not even the record. I think Wilt has the record with 55. But still, the fact he shot 44% from the field, only 30 points, 40 rebounds is amazing, but then only 4 assists. That kept him from having one of the best performances. And then Carmelo did have a 61-point game against the Milwaukee Bucks, but that game was over after the first quarter. I think they were up darn near 20, and then by the end of the game, they ended up beating that team by almost 50 points. So for those reasons, I have those guys as having every guy named Donovan, Michael Jordan, David Robinson, Elgin Baylor, Bill Russell, Carmelo, all sensational games, all legendary games, but not quite as good given the stat line and the stakes of the other guys I mentioned. But that's going to do it for the video today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you agree, if you disagree. If you agree, cool. If you disagree, let me know not only that you disagree, but what you disagree with about the list, and comment down below. Always try to engage as much as I can with every single person's comments and just have a healthy sports dialogue. But until next time, I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.